Okay, so this map here and table is taken straight out of the Regional Social and Economic Strategy for the Western and Northwest region in there. So we can see the red line there outlines the Galway Metropolitan Area Strategic Plan, and we can see the residential, industrial and regeneration highlighted. So the industry being in green, the residential, the red dots, and the regeneration sites effectively the city centre being in blue. The black line indicates the current city boundary from 2016 census. And we can see in the table then the amount of approximate land area, the land capacity for housing that's there that has been identified in this site. So the population of this area, Galway Metropolitan Area Strategic Plan, to grow by 27,500 people to 2026, and as I said previously, going from the 80,000 that we currently have to grow by another by a total of 40,000 people up to 120,000 people by 2040. So at least half of all new homes are to be delivered in that targeted within the Metropolitan Area Strategic Plan to be within the existing built-up footprint in there. So if we assume that, we'll say, take 125 homes that could be built per hectare as a kind of ballpark number, for example, that would say, for example, the regeneration lands that are identified there with 30% residential content with 10 hectares, that would be 1,250 homes in that regeneration site. And if we take maybe 2 people per home, so it depends on the type of homes that are built, let's say 2 people or 2.5 people, let's say 2 people per home, that's 2,500 people that could be accommodated in that area. Bearing in mind, so that's 2,500 people, we're saying that we need to have land there or to have a capacity or space, so whether it's a brownfield site, existing buildings or so on that need to be repurposed, we need to be able to create accommodation for an additional 40,000 people in there. So how are we going to do that? So that needs very careful thinking and planning and plan the whole built environment in there. So really what we need to do is we need to put in place the built environment infrastructure other than the homes before the homes are in place. What do I mean by that? Well, if I build a home out at the edge of the city and then there's no public transport, the first thing people are going to do is start driving to where they need to work, where they need to go to school and so on. If I put in the public transport system first, if I put in the safe cycle paths, the safe walking and that, then people will get into the habit of using those first and stay into that habit. Whereas if they're not in place when people move into their homes, then it's less likely that they're going to use them later on. They'll start becoming over-reliant on the cars. So within the regional social and economic strategy, there's core bus routes that are identified for the city in there, and that's also then implementing the Galway transportation strategy as well. So the core bus routes going back and over the city, we can see that the city is very linear in there because we've got the bay down to the south and to the north. There's not as much development land to the north, so we can go east-west as the development typically in the city in there. So there's core bus routes. There's also an argument for having a light rail system as well that travels along the city as well. The other element of the sustainable transport network is the cycle routes. So this is the proposed cycle routes within the Galway Metropolitan Area Strategic Plan within the Regional Social and Economic Strategy. The green lines there being potential greenways, corridors, the purple being the primary network, the orange being the secondary network, and the blue being the feeder network in there. So again, if we think of the hierarchy of transport, first thing we need to do is improve walking for people to make it easier for people to walk, put things within walking distance of where people live and work and so on, so the less reliance on other transport systems. The next then is cycle. Then the next level up would be public transport, use public transport, and then the lowest in terms of our sustainable transport planning will be to have to use the car. So that should be, we should design up our built environment such that there should be no need for a car within the system. We also need to protect and enhance our open spaces, our green network, our blue network within our cities. So this is again straight from the regional social and economic strategy for our region, where we can see the green spaces in there, the open spaces, the parks and others in there. So the built environment needs to be designed and developed such that not only does it protect those green spaces, but also it enhances the green and the blue spaces that are currently in the city and adds new additional green spaces, new public spaces, new public realm that the public can use, that nature can use and enhance our living environment and the living environment for other species in the city as well. So on to the Galway Metropolitan Area Strategic Plan. What I've done here is I've put some circles where the centre of those circles are at the city centre, so at the train station in the middle, and the first circle is at 5-minute cycle times from the train station, the next outer circle is 10-minute cycle time from the train station, and the next one is the 15-minute cycle time for the train station. So in our planning, really what we need to do in terms of planning the built environment is try and keep, say, within those 15 minutes from the train station. That means that for the majority of our population, we need to create the infrastructure, the cycling infrastructure, the walking infrastructure that people can get around the city very, very easily. And then we put the amenities that we need, the homes, the businesses, the education, the leisure facilities, the healthcare facilities, and so on, and keep them as tight within those things. So the planning really should be that those red dots for the residential sites that are further out, we should be trying to minimise the amount of those and maximising what we can put into the city centre in there. Okay, so there's some obviously like out in Oranmore, there's a red dot out beside Oranmore. There is a town in Oranmore, so that can be developed up as a hub as well out in Oranmore. But we shouldn't have urban sprawl where we're sprawling all the way along the coast from Bern and further out all the way along to a more Oranmore and back up to the end of the motorway and so on in the other direction. So this map shows it in a little bit more detail. So this is a satellite image of Galway with the red circles being the cycling times from the train station. With the first circle 5 minutes, second circle 10 minutes, and third circle 15 minutes. And then I've highlighted where the train station is, the two third level institutions, so the National University of Ireland Galway and GMIT, the numerous different hospitals around the city, shopping centres, businesses, and so on. So we can see that there's a lot of the built environment is inside that 15 minute cycle zone. So Galway is set to grow by, as I said, 50% over the next 20 years. So that's twice as much as Galway has grown in the past 50 years. So this is a significant challenge. So we need higher density development in or close to the city centre on brown sites, preserving or enhancing the green and blue areas that are currently in the city. So how are we going to accommodate those 40,000 additional people? So if we assume that there's about 2 people per home, which is, I said, is currently 2.8, then we needed an additional about 20,000 new homes within the city. And there's various different developments that are planned for the area, but let's talk about those in a little bit more detail. But let's kind of look a bit more what the city looks like. So we can see here in the plan, in this satellite image, I've highlighted some of the key infrastructure that we have, like stadia, business park, shopping centres, university, hospital, trains, station, and so on. But let's look at that now in a little bit more graphically. So here I've taken a map or a graphic that's put together by Arab consulting engineers when they looked at the initial feasibility for in terms of the employment, education, retail, and residential zones within Galway City and its environment. So they want to know, the different zones for the traffic generation and so on, looking at the feasibility for the new ring road or the new road to go around Galway City. And we can see here, so to the east of the city, there's predominantly a lot of businesses or industrial areas, whereas to the west of the city, a lot of living areas and retail spaces and so on. And then, living spaces mixed in between. We have the two third level institutions, one on the west of the city, close to the city centre, and one to the east of the city in there. So one of the issues, I suppose, in Galway currently is that a lot of people need to travel from the west of the city where they live to the east of the city where a lot of the businesses are and so on. So for sustainable development, for sustainable built environment, what we need to have is we need to have people and businesses being closer together, have a mixed development. So we have businesses, people live, work, leisure, healthcare, education, and so on, all close together. And so on the Arab image here, what I've done is I've overlaid then again, the cycle distance from the train station, the 5-minute, the 10-minute and the 15-minute cycle distances, and really kind of identifying that we need to concentrate on those areas first in terms of developing up those areas, identifying the brownfield sites within the city to develop up, to have more accommodation, more people living in them, and enhance the business opportunities for people, the work opportunities for people within the city, the leisure opportunities for people within the city, and the education opportunities for people within the city. So back to our satellite image of Galway again, and here just again to remind you, what I've done is I've overlain the old map of Galway city in it, just to show you again that the nucleus of the city, the old part of the city is there, and how much the sprawl has happened over the years, how much it's spread along over the years and that. So we need to now, as we say, compact growth, trying to concentrate the growth within the urban centres, the existing urban centres, by concentrating on redeveloping brownfield sites, rejuvenating city centres, and those sites that are underutilised currently. So one of these sites that have been identified by the Land Development Agency is on Sandy Road. So most of that land is under public ownership currently. So Sandy Road is an 8-hectare site, and the plan is to put 1,000 new homes in there. So if we put 1,000 new homes and 125 residents per hectare, that's approximately 2,000 people that could live on that site. That site is 5-minute cycle from the train station. It's about 1 kilometre from the city centre in there. So if we that's 2,000 people. Again, remember that in the next 20 years that the plan is that there's going to be 40,000 more people living in Galway City. So we need approximately 20 more such sites to be developed in the next 20 years. That shows the kind of scale in there. And of course then people, it's not just building houses for them. If there's 40,000 more people, they have to have places to work, for entertainment, for education, and so on in there. We have to deal with the waste that's going to be generated by an extra 40,000 people, the water demand for an extra 40,000 people, the energy demand for an extra 40,000 people, and so on in there. So it's a big undertaking, a big planning that needs to be put in place. And again, we really need to invest in that public infrastructure, in the energy supply, the water supply, the transport supply, and so on, before we build the houses, to make sure that the right infrastructure is in place before we develop sites. So what other potential sites are for developed to have sustainable development around the city? I've just identified a few here. So we have the Sandy Road site that we talked about. Just to the west of that, there's Dyke Road. There's a site available there. For example, around the Black Box, that could be developed in there. Just to the east of Eyre Square East, there's a private development, potentially has a potential for a lot of new homes there. Nuns Island, which we'll speak about in a little bit more detail, because the university is a large stakeholder in Nuns Island in terms of owns a good bit of property in Nuns Island. There's potential there to develop 200 or 300 new homes in Nuns Island to regenerate that area in there. And if we take all the way down in the docks area, currently under construction is mainly offices down there. That could be a huge focus for redevelopment in there in terms of the Kent Station site and all the other sites around it, for mixed development there, where we can have offices, we can have places for people to live, for homes, for them to work, education, leisure facilities, and so on, all in the heart of Galway, right onto the sea, very close to the train station, close to the existing city centre, and so on. In Galway, the local authority owns about 600 hectares of land around the city. Much of this is already in use, so not all the tracts will be available for accommodation purposes, for building homes for people. But if we had a rate of 125 residents per hectare, or about 250 people accommodated per hectare of land on average, then we would require 160 hectares to accommodate the 40,000 additional people. So that's 25% of the land owned by the local authority, if we could get all of that land available. And of course, that's not going to be all available, because that's not all brownfield sites that's currently available. Places like down in the docks, we could have a higher density development for taller buildings down there, so we could accommodate more people than the 125 residents per hectare. However, if we're going to use a mixed development in there, so we're going to have different uses for the land, then maybe we would not get higher density in terms of development down there for residential purposes.